Hello, my members. Thank you for supporting me. Before I get into the video, the actual encounter, I'm going to share some things with you because you are members and that's part of your perks. Court is coming up soon, and we're having a prayer date, April 8th. It's going to be a live where we're asking all the people that would like to pray with us to arrive and pray with us and stand on God's Word with us that Hunter's coming home. The boots on the ground tonight was really fascinating. We got some really good pictures. We're going to show those on the live this Saturday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And y'all will be able to see them. It's going to be pictures of the lights we saw that may possibly be orbs. I'm not sure what they was, but could possibly be orbs. We got some pretty good pictures, and we're going to show some videos, and we're going to talk about some encounters we've had and look at some clips and stuff. So it should be a pretty good night. I think it should be really good. We're looking at doing some other things. We're working out making a hike into this one place and possibly another place for 2 boots on the ground coming up. So that's your bonus content, guys. Let's get to this encounter, which is also your bonus content. I live in the northeast of England, on a farm miles from the nearest town or city. Usually it is rather peaceful. The closest I'd ever came to danger before this event was when a fox started headbutting my front door. I wanted to let it in, but as soon as it saw me, it bared its teeth, so I let it continue until it knocked itself out. Afterwards, I contained it and placed it away from my house. I didn't want my Rottweiler, Remus, to suffer any damage or to get possible rabies if it was sick because of how it was acting, since he is very protective of me. That was my most dangerous, scariest encounter with an animal until now. 2 weeks prior to this event, Remus' behavior started to become strange. He usually lays atop of me when I'm in bed. However, he became restless every night. He began to patrol the house, never sleeping or stopping at his water bowl. I'd hear him growl every once in a while, but I just assumed it was either a bird or a hedgehog that would cause him to growl. My house is quite large with a lot of windows, except for my bedroom. I didn't like the idea of someone potentially knowing when I was sleeping. During the day, I began to notice that there were a lot less creatures about. The farm that I live on stops at the edge of the forest, so creatures like deers and badgers tend to come into my land. I have no problem with this, since they don't bother my horses. About 1 week prior to this event, a policeman came knocking at my door. A first-time experience for me. He asked me if I had noticed anything abnormal. So I told him about the lack of animals, not thinking about Remus' change in behavior. After I told him this, he proceeded to tell me that the people who lived closest to me, about 4 miles away, had reported that all of their sheep had been slaughtered. After I heard this, I immediately became concerned about my horses. I thanked him for letting me know. Immediately, I moved the horses into their stables closer to my house. If I saw anything, I could get out there. There was only one problem. You aren't allowed guns in England, meaning that if something were out there, I'd have to face it with either a small hatchet or my fists. I prayed that I never received a visit from this thing that had killed all those sheep. A couple of hours before this nightmare took place, my clock broke. I go to bed early, around 9 p.m., so I can get up early and tend to the horses. This meant that I had no idea what time it was. Therefore, I was just going to bed when I started feeling tired. Later on, when night fell, Remus started his patrol. I was in the kitchen with my back to the window, preparing a salad for the next day. I turned around to go to the sink, which was directly below the window. Remus walked into the kitchen, which diverted my attention from the window. I looked at him, yet he didn't look at me. He was fixated on the window, growling. I looked up at the window. What greeted my sight can only be described as something demonic, maybe. A pair of yellow eyes which seemed to be glowing. They were staring at me. My eyes locked with its. My body seized up like a corpse. My heart stopped like it had hit a wall. It was only when the thing pressed its face against the glass that I noticed its facial features. A long snout, pointed ears, jagged teeth, All of this attached to a small, small dog head. It was bald with some strands of hair pressed against its head. The thing began tapping on the glass with its long, pointy nail, which always connected to a bony finger. Its hands were huge. They would easily be able to wrap around my neck. It snarled, lifting up its skin flaps on its bony jaw. The thing's teeth were jagged and stained with dark and red substance, presumably blood. I don't know for sure, but that was my guess. It looked like it was grinning at me, this evil grin. Suddenly, my heart, it began pumping faster and faster. Adrenaline began flooding my veins. It was too much for my brain to comprehend. The thing at the window, my horses, Remus, my safety. Where the F did this thing come from? I let out a scream that must be defend Remus. The panic that overwhelmed me was immeasurable. What was I going to do? There was no one around me, just me and this beastly thing. It started banging on the window with two huge and bony fists. Oh my God, it wanted to be in the house. I thought the window was going to shatter at any time. I took breaths in at an alarming rate, just standing there. The banging stopped. It then stood upright. It had bending over. My window's about 6 feet off the ground. Just how tall was it? I could no longer see its face. Its torso, it was thin, like an anorexic person with very little muscle mass. The ghastly thing's arms were weak-looking, with the entire arm looking like a wrist. Yet its nails were long and sharp-looking. It ran to the left. The sudden burst of movement made Remus sprint back to the back door. It was looking for a way in, and I was so afraid it was going to find one. Would the locks hold? I had locked every possible entrance, though I was safe, for the time being at least. I couldn't have this. I could not have it coming in. It would surely go after my horses if it couldn't get in. I had to confront it. It began banging on the window of the sitting room. I rushed in there, only to be greeted with the full body. The best way to describe it was lanky. It saw me and bared its teeth again. I had left the hatchet in the cupboard under the stairs. I sprinted to the cupboard and yanked the door open. Within 10 seconds I had the hatchet and was at the door. I said in a quick prayer to God and dashed outside. Remus immediately followed me out, as much as I didn't want him to. I ran around the house screaming. The last thing I wanted was a quiet hunt. I wanted to know where it was, so I wouldn't be surprised or caught off guard when it saw it. I couldn't find it. As much as I was putting on a brave face, I wouldn't, and I couldn't. I don't even know if I could even fight this thing, as terrified as I was inside. I made sure that Remus was next to me. I needed his hunting skills. Who was the hunter and who was the hunted, though? This thing couldn't be found by neither me or Remus. I stopped screaming. There was no point in wasting stamina or breath. I couldn't move because I was so afraid. I'd ran myself outside, and now I'm in its territory. A noise behind me would catch my attention. Making me turn around, nothing. A noise to the side, nothing. I noticed that Remus was looking at the roof of the house. A sharp wave of fear swept over me as I began to look up. Surely enough, me and this thing locked eyes again. It was crouched down on top of the roof, as if it was ready to pounce like a large cat. It suddenly leaped at me. I swung and I missed it as it landed on top of me. We rolled on the ground until it positioned itself on top. It was heavier than its body let on. I couldn't move it. It attempted to bite into my neck. However, I managed to catch the skinny neck with one hand. It attempted to strangle it, yet its relentlessness wouldn't cease. I saw its long arm begin to rise up, ready for a swing. Just before it had time to, Remus clung onto its arm with his jaw. He began pulling at it, managing to drag it off of me. This bastard then decided to go for Remus. Getting up, I started to run at it. It must have knew that I was going to attack it because it jumped up and it leaped on top of the house again. It used its front paws to grab the house and pull itself up, like a bodybuilder or a gymnast. And that's when I was saved. End of the driveway, headlights. Oh my God, thank God, who is it? It was our local sheriff deputy that had checked on me. He had came back to check on me again. When he pulled into the drive, of course I looked at the vehicle, and then when I looked back up to the roof, the creature was gone. I told the deputy about the encounter. He took a full report but would only call it a prowler. He would not tell or say what I had told him. I told him what I'd seen, and there was no doubt that what I had seen. He called it a prowler and took me to the ER. At the ER, they treated me for assault and battery with a deadly weapon, and they even went as far as to list they were looking for a tall, skinny suspect with long black hair. No matter how many times I told them, they wrote their own story. And then he slid the paper to me while I lay in the hospital bed and asked me to sign it. And I said, "This is not what happened. That's not what it was. I'm trying to tell you." And he looked at me and said, "Sign it or we'll let it have you." I signed it. They assured me they had took care of it, and when I went home I'd be safe. I've now been home 3 weeks. Nothing has happened. I'm guessing they kept their word and took care of it. What do you guys think it was? Well, number one, there's no doubt that they cover up for these things because they know what they are, and by them knowing what they are and knowing they exist, that makes them liable. So they're not going to tell you the truth. I'm sure they probably did go take care of it. And what it was, you'll never know. I believe this happens a lot. But when you write false reports and they're turned in, and it ain't your fault that this happened. I understand that you're under duress, and it's scary when you're threatened by, people like that. So you probably done the right thing to protect you and your family. But I don't feel like, they're doing the right thing because it's allowing these things to get away with what they're doing. I think what you ran into was a Dogman. It was probably a sick one. It was probably an older one. And it might have been kicked from the pack. It could have been a loner. And it was just looking probably to eat your dog is what I would guess. And given the chance, it would have ate you too. These things are very smart. I believe they have a really high intelligence. And it probably would have made it look like an animal attacked you. And you'd have been found the next day with your dog and half eaten and consumed like everybody else. And they would have blamed it on a mountain lion or, whatever else is in your area that's a predator. Just my thoughts. What do you guys think about this? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for being members. And to the rest of my people, this will be released to you at a later time. And like I said, you will always have access to everything we do. It's just the members will have earlier access. Thank you all so very much. Keep your head on a swivel and don't be something's dinner.